Talk Radio 640 WGST.
Now back to the Dana Barrett Show here on WGST.
In the wake of President Trump being elected to office, more women than ever looked to run for office in this country. Women have marched. Women have formed all kinds of groups and are, I'm just going to say it this way, fighting back. We have potentially a monumentous year here in Georgia. If Stacey Abrams is elected governor, she'd be the first woman governor in Georgia and the first Black female governor in the country, which is phenomenal. So the question now is, what can you do aside from vote, which you need to do over the next couple of days? But what can you do even after the election? To that end, I've got Emma Gray joining us on the phone. She is the author of A Girl's Guide to Joining the Resistance. Emma, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure
to
have.
Week.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to. It is a crazy week, and it is a pleasure to have you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week when you're here in Atlanta for a talk at the book festival at the Jewish Community Center. So looking forward to that.
Yes, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a great talk along with Allison Yarrow and myself. But I wanted to get you on the phone today, in particular before this election, to talk about sort of what it means to even join the resistance in the first place.
I think it means being involved, showing up for yourself, for your communities, and for your nation.
And, you know, we did see, obviously, a lot more women get involved after Trump was elected. Do you feel like that momentum for women has continued and will take us through the midterm successfully?
It certainly continued. We have record number of women running for office across the board. And we have to remember that even if those women aren't winning every race, statistically, women win the same percentage of races that men do, but they are far less likely to run. So the important thing for, eventually getting more gender parity in our government is women just stepping up, saying, and having institutional support to go and run for office and really, really build that groundwork. So I think the momentum we've seen is incredibly, incredibly exciting. And we're going to see definitely some gains on Election Day. But of course, so many of these races are so close. It's really, it's hard to play any guessing game.
I know it's going to be an interesting Tuesday evening for sure. It's going to be nerve-wracking for a lot of people. I was reading an article the other day, Emma, that talked about the fact that women, not unlike women in a lot of categories, while many more are running, they are still having trouble raising money at the same levels that men are for their campaigns. Have you heard much about that?
Yes, it's definitely a thing that's happening, and that's why it is so important that we are seeing organizations pop up that are specifically designed to prop up women candidates at the state and local level. So that is part of how that, gender gap fills.
Right.
Is if you can't raise enough money to make your candidacy, get your candidacy out there, then, how do you build that momentum and how do you get elected? So that's certainly something that I think women across the board are going to unfortunately struggle with, but also we are seeing an incredible number of organizations pop up to combat that gap. So I'm hopeful.
I am too. I'll keep my fingers crossed, and perhaps with each consecutive election, it's going to get better and better, especially as women win and show that they can win. I want to talk to you a little bit about this idea of talking versus doing. Because I think there's a lot of talk, and certainly we are seeing a lot of women run, but for the average woman who cares, let's say, but who isn't willing to run for office right now or can't run for office for whatever reason, is there a frustration that there's not enough things to do, that it's just a lot of talking and there's not enough action that we can take?
There is no shortage of things to do. And I would say that for some people, talking can be a part of action, especially if you have family members who you disagree with or people in your life that you are able to have difficult conversations with around this election, people in your family and in your community that, aren't registered to vote or or are registered and have not historically gone to vote.
Yeah.
Talking can create action. So I'd say that talking is very important. But also there is so much to do up until the very day, and then after Election Day. You can get out there and be text banking, you can be phone banking, you can be canvassing. There is no shortage of, big and small actions that you can take. And I think often we get very overwhelmed. There are so many things, for a lot of people, I think, that can make them very anxious and angry, and it's hard to know where to begin. But I always say, action needs to be habit forming. So anything that you can find that you can actually integrate into your schedule is the kind of action that, will take you through the marathon and not just the sprint.
I love that. Emma Gray on the phone with us right now. She is the author of A Girl's Guide to Joining the Resistance. Emma, I have to ask you also about calling your congressman or calling your senator, because I feel like this is advice we hear all the time. And I'm just wondering, if you're, in a district where or a state where your congressman or senator is, not aligned with you, is on the opposite side, does it do any good to actually make those calls?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People, especially when you call, their staffers are in their offices and they are having to write down these messages. They are having to listen to you. So that energy certainly gets passed along to that elected official. We have to remember that these public servants are elected to serve their constituents. I think what gets less effective is when people outside of the district flood an office with calls. I think that has a little more mixed results, but certainly if you are in a district where you are in disagreement with something that your congressperson or senator or county council member is doing, give them a call. It definitely can make a difference. And also I'd say give a call to affirm the action that your elected officials are taking if you agree with them, because that also will get through.
So let me ask you, while we're on that track about what works and what doesn't, do emails work or no?
I think it's better than nothing.
Okay. All right. And what about all the petitions that we get all the time that we're always asked, like someone will forward along a petition and they want you to sign your name to it? Does that do anything?
I can't say that I'm a complete expert on I haven't seen any research on the impact of petitions.
Yeah.
Again, it's the kind of thing that is such a small action to take that I don't think it can hurt. But
Sure.
I would say, don't pat yourself on the back and be like, I'm done now.
Very, very fair point. Listen, before I let you go, I do have one other question I want to ask you. You talk about this a little bit in the book, and there's been a lot of discussion about this in and around gender equality, whether it's political or just talking about gender equality in the workplace or Me Too or any of that. And that is how allies can be involved. Should they be included? How, in my opinion, men have to be part of the solution. So the question is, how can they participate in a way that women will accept?
Oh, absolutely. There is a place for allies in all of these conversations. And I'd say the most important thing to do is show up and listen. I say this to other white women all the time. It's so important for me as a white woman to show up for women of color, and I don't need to be leading those conversations. I need to be listening, and I need to be putting my physical body and presence and platform out there. I'd say the same thing for men, to show up for the women in their lives.
So such a good point. I feel like I saw a lot of men at the Women's March here in Atlanta, and that's all they did was show up, and that was great. Emma Gray, thank you so much for spending some time with us on the phone today. And again, look forward to seeing you next week when you're here in Atlanta. The book is A Girl's Guide to Joining the Resistance, and definitely come out November 7th, Wednesday evening. I'll be on stage with Emma Gray and Allison Yarrow talking about all of these topics and more. It's the Dana Barrett Show. We'll be right back.